You hear it, the tone. Not enough to make a thing of it. Not enough to stop the conversation. And not enough to justify changing the mood. So you let it pass. Later, there's another one. A joke that lands slightly wrong. A standard you don't bother holding. A moment you would have challenged once, but didn't. Nothing happens. The moment passes. Most lives don't collapse. They don't usually break in one clean moment in time. There isn't always an event, a clear event that took place. There's not one single mistake big enough to explain how things have turned out. It generally happens much more quietly than that. Because most lives don't actually collapse. They erode. People wait for a disaster, but most damage arrives as adjustment. Erosion begins with what you keep living with. Not because it's good or great, and not because it even fits, but because it's just not bad enough today. So you tolerate it. It's in the tone you don't address. And the disrespect, you just brush away, you explain it away. It's the standards you no longer protect. And in the boundaries you stopped enforcing. You let small things go. You kept letting it go. You stopped correcting it. You stopped naming it. You start building around it. And eventually, it isn't something you're tolerating. It's the environment you live inside now. And then it's the version of you that the environment produces. You don't adapt to what's right. You adapt to what you repeatedly allow. And it gives you something immediately. Because you don't have to face any confrontation. There isn't a scene you have to deal with. And you're not taking no risk today. Because you're keeping it smooth, non-confrontational. You get to say you're reasonable. You get to avoid becoming the person who made it awkward. And that's why people do it. That's why we all do it. Not because we agree with what's happening, but because tolerance feels cheaper in the moment. Erosion survives because smoothness feels like safety. Because people misread the signal. nothing explodes. So we all call it fine. And nothing breaks publicly. So everything's stable. And nothing dramatic happened today. So we assume that no damage is being done. But the absence of explosion is not the presence of health. And that's the mistake. The standards are still moving. Your relationships are still being trained by what you permit. You call it stable because it was slow. But the absence of collapse is not proof of health. And this is different. Erosion is what happens when tolerance becomes culture. This isn't about carrying too many open loops. And it isn't about choosing sharp pain now or slow pain later. This is what happens when repeated tolerance becomes environment. When what should have stayed unacceptable becomes normal. Some things don't get worse because you choose them. They get worse because you kept living with them. I started naming things earlier. Not the 10th time, the first. Someone would make a joke and everyone laughs. And now I say calmly, that's not how we talk about people here. Then I simply stop talking. The tone in the room, well, things that were said, it becomes slightly off. Because the standard that had started to slip, because everyone had adjusted to it. I didn't feel powerful. I felt disruptive, less smooth, less easy, less socially convenient. But I was clearer. What I lost was smoothness. What I stopped losing was structure. And what you tolerate teaches the system what to become. And once you see erosion, you stop calling it fine. You stop calling it just how they are. You stop calling it not worth it. And you start calling it what it is. Training. Training your standards. Training your tolerance. Training the shape of your life around what you keep allowing. Most things don't collapse. They erode. What are you tolerating because it hasn't collapsed yet?